Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Tahir Dhindsa and you're watching SDTV. Food scarcity was an issue. Now food security is looming large after Ukraine war and the commodity prices. We know all that. But there is a hidden thing as well which has been neglected for very long, and that is nutrition. Whosoever eats food, most of them sometime make do with cellulose and carbohydrate only, with some vegetable and carbohydrate in the form of staple grain and everything. As a result, the quantity is less and the quality is not sufficient in the variety that together brings good nutrition. As a result, there's a nutrition crisis which is looming large, especially in the youngsters. Now, once upon a time, we would talk that the energy crisis has cost us about 5 to 6% of the GDP. Now people, organizations, and the experts are saying that the loss of nutrition is costing us similar amount, and the amount that is needed to rescue humanity from the brink is much little. We have today with us country director GAIN, Farrah Naz, who has seen all this at the international level, at the level of the donors, at the level of the sovereign governments and sovereign entities, and then in Pakistan. And she knows how to connect this maze, to connect this jigsaw puzzle where the horizontal and the vertical efforts can bring fruit. Ma'am, very warm welcome. Tell us something as a basic premise and then we'll continue with this discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this. I will start with GAIN. GAIN has a vision of a world where everyone has access to nutritious food, nutritious and healthy food.
Right.
So we actually talk about healthier diets, which are nutritious enough for people and which fulfill their nutrition needs. So that would obviously include diversity of diets, that will also include quality of diets, that will also include food safety. But this is a broader mission of GAIN, that we want that everyone has access to healthier diets.
Right.
We do work on nutrition, but our emphasis is on diets because while there are people who need therapeutic feeding, and therapeutic feeding should be provided as part of the health system to children who are wasted or who are stunted, and also the mothers who are anemic. But we also feel that if the diets are adequate, then most of the issues of malnutrition would be addressed. So in terms of, if I look at the situation now of the overall world, main challenges that the whole world is facing, and the developing countries are facing them more. One is climate change, and I would put climate change at the top because climate change has caused so many disasters. So many countries had to face, in the past couple of years, disasters because of the climate change impact on their countries. Even though countries like Pakistan are not contributing to the carbon dioxide that much. We are less than 1%. However, we should not be satisfied with that because we are the 7th most vulnerable country in the world in terms of impact of the climate change, receiving end of the climate change. Other factors, obviously, are the economic crisis that the world is going through. The war in Ukraine has also affected a lot of countries where people used to get inputs for their food production, and other energy needs were met largely from trade with Ukraine.
So you think primarily it is a crisis of supply side because of the climate change which is happening. But do you think in Pakistan particularly it is affordability as well?
Yes, of course. If we look at the 2016 study on the cost of diet, affordability seems to be a major issue. At that particular time, it was 67% people in Pakistan who could not afford a healthy diet.
Right.
Now, it might have increased to 80% because of the floods, because of so much went to waste during floods of 2022, the crops, standing crops, vegetables. Many of the districts that were seriously affected are the vegetable producing districts. So a lot of vegetables, even what we get in Islamabad, the prices, you must have seen prices going up. And people now cooking almost half the amount of vegetables that they used to cook before 2022 because it's the less availability. And it is also affordability, because when there is less availability, obviously the prices definitely go up. But apart from that, the overall economic shock that country has been into, the depreciation of foreign currency, rupee depreciating against dollar, and other foreign currencies. Similarly, issues like when there is less available, there is more demand. So obviously, definitely, the prices are going to go up. Already in Pakistan, before this 2022, a study that GAIN had conducted on dietary diversity showed a very low diversity score for women in terms of the nutritious food, especially vegetables and the vitamin A-rich vegetables and greens. Very little of these vegetables are eaten in Pakistan. So even before that, the situation was like that. And after flood, the situation must have worsened. There is a need to repeat that study to see that what impact it has had on the dietary diversity score.
You, madam, recently participated in the food summit. What are the gains? And how the gains, the results from that summit, how can we apply them and gains from them?
Recently, actually, it was the stock-taking movement, UN Food System Summit +2, because it has been 2 years since the Food System Summit had happened. So 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, the governments mobilized a lot of their leadership, and they committed that they will work to transform their food system in order to address climate change, in order to address hunger, in order to address the sustainable production, as well as then technological innovations in order to have a better food system in place which will meet the needs of nutrition of everyone. So obviously, that happened 2 years ago. All the governments, they produced their documents which were called National Food System Transformation Pathways. So this stock-taking movement after 2 years was to look at what progress each state has made against those National Food System Pathways. What are the challenges? What has been the opportunities, and what support different states are looking for from the global community? So many of the countries were represented in the stock-taking movement. Unfortunately, our state delegation could not participate. However, from GAIN, one person from GAIN Pakistan, one person participated and represented Pakistan's point of view, but also at the same time, the government had submitted its review of the 2 years stock-taking paper to the UN, which was, in many cases, some people used it as some other states took examples from that and used those as as good practices, and perhaps that can be replicated by others as well. So at least, there is that momentum that was generated. And of course, during this momentum, there was also a policy scoping done by GAIN, and we looked at what are the gaps in the food system related policies which hinder nutrition as well, and where we need to integrate food system and nutrition together and see that how we can strengthen the whole food system in Pakistan so that the nutrition needs can also be met.
And you talked about the transformation and the pathways, and then you talked about the scoping studies.
Yeah.
So obviously, if these three things are there, then obviously you're talking about the food system transformation.
Yeah.
What is the transformation? When we say transformation, what is the place where these pathways would take us, and what would happen? What are the goals?
Okay. The pathways have looked at 7 areas clearly. So one is related to production, and in terms of production, looking at regenerative agriculture is one of the aims that the government has in order to move forward and transform the way that we produce so that future generations do not have a system which has been impacted by practices which are not sustainable. So regenerative agriculture is one of those. The other is related to SMEs, their capacity building, so that whatever they are producing is according to the standards, the nutrition standards and the food standards that government has put forward in terms of implementation. PSQCA is responsible for that. Then there is also the climate change and its impact, and how we can reduce while producing, how we can reduce the carbon footprints, and also how can we go to zero waste in terms of working on post-harvest losses, reducing the post-harvest losses. Because in Pakistan, if you know that there are almost 40% of the fresh food goes to waste after harvest, because there are problems in sorting, packaging, transportation, storage. Storage is a big problem. Storage, even for the dry rations, about 10% goes to a waste during storage. But fresh fruits and vegetables, they are wasted more. And these are the ones that provide most of the minerals, most of the vitamins, most of the nutritious elements that are required in the body on everyday basis. So government has looked at the post-harvest losses and is committed to actually work on this so that there are less losses and we save what we produce, because what is lost also adds to the carbon footprints.
Right. So, do you think at the current state there is some gain, and what should the government do? Because I personally understand that the principal work must be taken by the government.
Of course.
And the NGOs and the civil societies and the other stakeholders can chip in to fill up the gaps. Exactly. So, what do you suggest on the policy level? Quickly.
Sure. Policy level, the policy gap analysis that was done looked at all the policies, and we have seen that we do not have a policy on national policy on nutrition. So when we do not, there was a strategy which was developed on multi-sectoral nutrition, which was up to 2023. But there hasn't been an overarching policy that will provide overall guidance to the provinces to go in a certain direction in terms of their work on nutrition. So this is an area which needs to happen, where GAIN is now working with the government of Pakistan, Ministry of Planning, the nutrition section, to develop a policy which will then fill in that gap. Based on that, then operational plans and strategy and other documents can be developed by provinces, and they can move ahead on those. The policy obviously will take into account that it is done in a participatory manner, and most of the people whose needs never reflect in the policy, those are reflected in the policy. Those are people are consulted. Their needs, their point of view about the food system and nutrition are reflected in there. And people actually, not just the provincial level, but the districts and the other implementation level, they own that policy. So for that, there have to be consultations with young people, with women, with the government departments, as well as universities, academia. A lot of research is happening on biofortified crops. So all that needs to be taken into account while talking about the nutrition. Private sector needs to be on board in terms of giving their input to the policy.
Madam, it's a very interesting topic, and it's very important to the, even if we say, national security, and we must go on. During the limited time we have, I think we've talked a little bit on that, and we'll do more programs. I'm looking forward to do more programs, and I think it's very useful. It's a national service, if we say. So the bottom line is that food security is important, but the most important part of the food security, I mean the kernel in the nut, the shell is food security, but the kernel is nutrition. And I personally, especially after this program, I understand that it should be an icon with a separate head on the policy table, nutrition, because obviously if you study but you cannot read or write, that is useless then. If you have food security, you're getting some food, but the nutrition is not there, I think its utility is much reduced and marginalized. And government should look at this from this vintage point as well. That's all for up till now, and we'll bring back more program. Goodbye till then.